So there you have it.
We're
All right.
family here.
We are family. We are family, and I love you all, and I know you're all here to support me, and I thank you all for that. Thank you. So, my talk today is called Pennies from Heaven. And I want to share something with you. You all see this? I call this my little prosperity bank. It's a little, it's not a piggy bank, but it's a prosperity bank. And there's probably about $8 or so in there. I didn't count out how much was in there, but I counted out 227 individual coins. So, value about $8 as far as money equivalent. But how much do you think that the contents are really worth? Well, we're going to come back to that later, because it's not all about the coins inside. So my talk today is about prosperity in the form of money. Now, we all know that prosperity takes many different shapes, many different things, many different attributes. But today I'm going to be talking more specifically about money. And here's my thing. I could just say money is good, the end, see you later. But Barbara specifically told me my talk had to be between 20 and 25 minutes, and so I had to come up with an alternative version. So, Sir Francis Drake lived in the 17th century. And Francis, for any of you who have studied science, Francis Drake is the scientist who came up with what's called the scientific method. He's the guy who came up with the process that scientists use to this day to prove their theories. And it's not an easy thing to do. But he's attributed as saying, "Be not penny wise. Riches have wings. Sometimes they fly away of themselves, and sometimes they must be set flying to bring in more." Does that ring a bell with anybody? Does that sort of sound like the law of circulation that we talk about all the time in this teaching? Well, I think that what Francis was talking about when he said sometimes they must be set flying to bring in more is what you give out is what you should expect to get back in. And I don't mean that literally, but there is a law in motion here. And over the past 15 years or so, I've been really focusing. I've had periods in that 15 years where I've really focused on prosperity. And the reason why I do that is because to me, religious science is in part a science. And to me, prosperity is one of the easiest things to demonstrate because it's tangible. If I am treating or praying for something specific and it has form, it's easy for me to know whether my treatment worked. I can prove it to myself. So when I first came into religious science, that's one of the first things I did, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that experiment in a minute. But during that 15 years, probably about 10 years ago, I became kind of unhappy and discontent with my job. I was in healthcare software for about 20 years, and part of my job was every single week I traveled somewhere. Every single week, probably 3 or 4 weeks out of the year, 2 weeks vacation, and maybe 2 weeks I just didn't go anywhere. But, you know, after 9/11, traveling wasn't so much fun anymore. And so I decided I needed a new vocation. And I was reading a book called When Work Doesn't Work Anymore, and I apologize, but I can't remember the author's name. But that book really gave me some insight, and so I started really contemplating about what is it that I wanted to do? What did I want to do? Did I want to do anything? What did I want to do? And whatever I chose, I was making pretty good money in that previous vocation. Whatever I chose for my future vocation, did it have to make me rich? Well, there was something in the back of my head that keeps saying, yeah. But I kept asking myself, is that your ego talking? That little self? Or is that God self within? Is that non-ego presence that we all have, which is the core of our spiritual essence? Well, I really had a lot of conflicting thoughts about this because I wasn't really sure what voice was talking. But you know, Ernest Holmes, I want to quote Ernest Holmes here. He said that prosperity is the outpicturing of substance in our affairs. Everything in the universe is for us. Nothing is against us. We must know that everywhere we go, we meet friendship, love, human interest, and helpfulness. Life is ever giving of itself. We must receive, utilize, and extend the gift. Now here's something I'm going to come back to. So it says, success and prosperity are spiritual attributes belonging to all people, but not necessarily used by all people. End quote. So here I am trying to think, do I need to be rich? Do I not need to be rich? And I do think that in my definition of rich, the answer was yes. I wasn't talking about physical money. I was talking about financial freedom. So I guess the first thing is you have to determine, what does prosperity really mean to you? What does being rich mean to you? You know, God's prosperity includes money, of course. You know, when we hear the word prosperity, often the first image in our mind is financial prosperity, but it includes everything. It includes love and joy and health, beautiful relationships, and everything that is good. And it took me years to really get that part of the definition of prosperity, and it took me many more years to really integrate that into my life, to really understand the concept, the consciousness of prosperity. And to me, it's not about what I have, it's about what I do with what I have. So why isn't everyone rich? That's all it takes, is to think about and believe and have think about being rich and deciding that you want to be rich. Well, I think first it's because not everybody wants to be rich. It's not only about believing that you can be rich, it's your desire as well. Those two are paired when you look to demonstrate something. And so if the desire's not there, even though you believe you have the right to be rich, you're probably not going to get rich. Your purpose, your goal is on something else. The other reason, in my view, is what Ernest said in that previous quote. He said, because success and prosperity are not used by all. And in my experience, wealth becomes something lovely only when it is accompanied by a giving heart. So, about 18 years ago, I literally stumbled into religious science. And one of the first things I did was I took a prosperity workshop. And one of the things we did in this workshop was an exercise, and we talked about our old tapes about money. And you know what I mean by old tapes, our old beliefs, what we heard as a child, what was pounded into us, whether it was the truth or not. And I'm sure that if we brainstormed right now, we'd probably come up with hundreds of those old tapes. I'm going to share a couple that really hit hard with me while I was growing up. Well, the first one, and this is, I rank these because this is what I heard most often. Number one, money is dirty. Carolyn, go wash your hands after touching money of any kind. And you know, have any of you read Catherine Ponder's series, The Millionaire series? Quite some time ago, she wrote a series. The first book I read in it was called The Millionaire from Nazareth. This really blew my mind. It really opened me to a lot of new thoughts about prosperity, and it made me really think about what it really was. She also had The Millionaire Moses, The Millionaire Joshua, and Millionaires of the Bible. And if I had a dime for every time my mom told me to wash my hands, I am sure there would be a book called The Millionaire from Franklin. But, you know, those are some good reads if you want to read about prosperity, but also read about it in the context of the stories of the Bible. It's really interesting. We don't get sick because there are microbes or viruses or bacteria on money. I'm not saying that they aren't there. We get sick because we have a consciousness that says we can get sick because there are microbes and viruses and bacteria on money. These things are on everything. Yes, they're on money too, but it is our consciousness that tells us something contrary to what the truth is. Number 2, this is one of my favorites. My parents always used to say, I'd say, Mom, can I have this? Actually, my dad said this more. Dad, can I have this? And he goes, what? Do you think money grows on trees?
Yes.
Well, I, for one, know differently. I want to tell you about a story, and some of you may have heard this before, but it's such a fun story, I just have to tell you again. I was out on a business trip in San Francisco, probably 15 to 18 years ago, and we, a number of us, were going out for dinner that night, and we were headed down toward Fisherman's Wharf. And as you might imagine, next to the water, it gets kind of windy, right? So I'm walking along, and literally out of a tree, a dollar bill started wafting down. And me, okay, I had just started my foundations class, and it's the first time I had ever heard the statement, you are worthy and deserving of prosperity. And so I'm seeing this dollar like right in front of me, and I'm starting to reach out for it, and it's wafting down to the ground, and I reach for it, and a bustle of wind comes and starts swirling it around, and I do that a few times, and I'm sure it looked kind of silly and comical, but finally I put my shoe on it and picked it up. And I just knew, I had that aha moment that this wasn't about a dollar bill. This was about a personal message from God that I am worthy and deserving of prosperity. I am a child of God, worthy and deserving of whatever God chooses to give me. And so you see, from that day, I have an open heart, and I'm open to receive money from wherever it comes, from a tree, from the air, from an apparent nothingness, from a gift, from a paycheck. It doesn't matter. Once you have the consciousness, or once you kind of get it and have that aha moment, it's beautiful. So money does grow on trees. I kind of changed that fallacy for myself that day. And, remember what Jesus said, in everything it is done unto you as you believe. So the third adage or kind of fallacy that I heard growing up was, it is better to give than to receive. Okay? Now, according to the law of circulation, this just ain't so. The basic law of circulation kind of goes like this. What you put out comes back to you multiplied. You don't have to think about it. You just give with a loving heart, give with joy, and something equal to or greater will find its way to you. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it. It's just the law. So Eric Butterworth tells us in Spiritual Economics, he said, in an orderly universe, there is simply no way in which we can get something for nothing. Under divine law, you receive as you give. As you give. So there's both a giving and a receiving taking place, right? I guess my point is, it is equally good to give and to receive. I know some people who give. And when someone offers them something from their heart, they refuse it. Oh, I can't take that. And what I see often is that there is an appearance of lack or limitation in that person's life. Why? Because they're retarding the flow. They're blocking the flow. It is equally good to give and receive. I'm not talking just money. In Luke 12:32 it says, "Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." And as practicing metaphysicians, it's our job to be open to receive, just as we give. Catherine Ponder, one of my favorite prosperity authors, says in The Secret of Unlimited Prosperity, most of us want to be good givers. We're eager to share all the fine and lovely things of life with others, but we sometimes forget that we must take the time and thought for receiving. Be still, sit quietly, and simply say to the loving Father, I am ready to receive all the good you wish to give me. When you refuse a gift, you may be thwarting someone else's joy in giving. Does everybody agree it feels good to give?
Yeah.
Allow other people to feel that joy as well. The fourth adage, and this we hear everywhere. We hear it from our parents, we hear it on the news, we hear it from evangelists. What do you think it is? Hell and damnation. Mm-hmm. Money is the root of all evil. You know, Mark Twain turned that around and he said, the lack of money is the root of all evil. And just to cover my tuchus, science of mind doesn't believe in evil. Science of mind says that the word evil, or the science of mind translation, is misguided or misused thought. It's just a mistake in thought. And that mistaken thought comes back to us in the appearance of some misfortune or some limitation. But money itself is good. If we truly believe what we talk, that all is one, money is part of God, and that makes money good. Again, Eric Butterworth in Spiritual Economics says the love of money, according to Timothy, in the Bible, the love of money is the root of all evils. But he said money is indeed innocent. It's the love of money, the consciousness in which you use money, that is the cause of such limitation. And you could turn it around and say the right attitude toward money is a root of all kinds of prosperity. So I have found that a lot of people, when it comes to prosperity, have a difficult time accepting that they are worthy and deserving of prosperity. Okay? I see that as kind of a block. And what I'd like to ask is, do you believe you're worthy and deserving of prosperity? Do you? Everybody here is saying, And if you do, then my next question is, do you believe you're worthy and deserving of opulence? I know a lot of people have a kind of a negative connotation of that word, but really the definition of opulence is an abundant supply of everything. So do you believe that you're worthy and deserving of having an abundant supply of everything? It's your birthright. You're a child of God. Do you think that you're strong enough to believe that? That you're worthy and deserving of opulence? I hope so. And number 5, if I'm rich, somebody else is going to go without. Well, that's all about the poverty consciousness. That's all about believing in lack. And this planet will never, ever have a shortage of anything. It is abundant in all things. Everyone can have what they want. You can be wealthy without affecting the supply of other people. Don't you believe that you're responsible for your own life? For your own experience? Do you believe you're responsible for everybody else in the world? Responsible? No, perhaps. Offer helping hands? Giving? Yes. But are you responsible for their experience? No. In my opinion. Ernest Holmes, probably my favorite book of Ernest Holmes is Creative Mind and Success. And in that book, he says, one of the most important things to remember is that we cannot demonstrate life beyond our own mental ability to embody it. And in the Science of Mind textbook, he goes on to say, anything that will enable us to express a greater life, greater happiness, greater power, so long as it harms no one else, must be the will of God for us. As much life as one can conceive will become part of his experience. He's a smart guy. So, I want you to think about this for a minute. What's your level of acceptance? How much can you embody? And let's just use this in the framework of an annual income. Can you accept $1,000 of annual income? Okay. Now let's ratchet it up a bit. Can you accept $5,000? 20? 50? What about $1 million? And I want you to think about, as you're thinking about this, where does it start to feel uncomfortable for you? So,
keep going.
Okay. And I use that $1 million because there's what I call a millionaire consciousness. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you have that consciousness, you're going to get $1 million. Remember, you have to desire that. You also have to use the tools that Ernest Holmes is talking about to achieve it. You can't just sit around. In my view, you have to treat and move your feet, which is another adage or saying that Ernest was credited as saying. And you might say, well, Carol, you're kind of standing there talking big. Where's your $1 million? Well, remember, it's about what I desire and what I treat for, what I believe I can have. And when I set my prosperity goal, it wasn't about a dollar amount. It was about financial freedom. I wanted to do what I want when I wanted to do it. And so to me, that is the millionaire consciousness. And an interesting thing to do when you're setting goals, let's just say that you say, I want $20,000. Well, that may or may not be the true gut of your goal, but the next question is, what will it feel like when I have it? What will it feel like when I have it? So my goal was financial freedom. I have everything I want. I achieved my goal. In my view, I am a millionaire, just maybe not in physical dollars. And I want to say something. This little book that Barbara's going to start talking about not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, Wallace Wattles. I understand that a couple people here have started reading ahead, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I understand that one of his kind of premises in the book is summarized as, if you want more, give more. So how can we go from our current level of prosperity or lack to something better? And one of the things I really love about religious science is they don't just preach at you. They give you tools. They have classes. They teach you how to use the tools that they give you. So I'm going to go down a list of some tools that I've learned in religious science that's enabled me to be successful at almost every goal I've ever set out. And those that I weren't successful at, after reviewing them, it really wasn't what I wanted. It really wasn't what was in my heart. So the first one is to contemplate or assess what you really want. Now, if the goal is prosperity, you have to clarify, what is it I want? And then become really, really clear on it. A lot of us aren't clear on what we want. You know, an example I would hear a lot of in some of the classes was somebody said, I want a red sports car that had all these attributes, you know, an expensive sports car. But what they really wanted when they really got down to the nitty-gritty is they wanted a reliable form of transportation. They wanted to be able to travel in comfort. It wasn't about the red sports car. That was just the frills and the excitement. What they really wanted was reliable transportation. So, become clear on what it is you want, and then pray, or in our lingo, treat. Okay? If your goal, if what you're clear on is about prosperity, then pray about that goal. Treat yourself on that goal. What Butterworth says, again in Spiritual Economic, is the rich mentality will not come because of your financial involvement. It must come first out of your steady effort to know God as your supply. Treat for what you have clarified in that preceding step. Can you turn the ear down a little bit? Okay, the next one. Daily affirmations. I know. Here's another thing that I probably told you before. Some of you have heard this several times. But first I want to say that, Charles Fillmore, one of the co-founders of Unity, wrote a book, and the book is simply titled Prosperity. And in it he said, charge your mind with statements that express plenty. So I want to tell you that I took the 4 T's class a couple of times. And that's a Unity class, and it's called Tithing of Time, Talent, and Treasure, so the 4 T's. And one of the things that the author of that class, Reverend Stretton Smith, required of the students was to craft an affirmation, a prosperity affirmation, and then as part of your homework every single day for 12 weeks, every day, you recite that out loud 100 times in the morning and 100 times right before you go to bed. Whatever affirmation feels right to you. Well, I did it because it was a required homework assignment. But I mean, when I first heard it, I was like, really don't want to do that. But I did it. And I want to tell you that one of the amazing demonstrations for me was I had been working for a company for several years. I was in sales, and we had been in dispute over a commission that amounted to $20,000. For over 2 years, this was an ongoing, unresolved dispute, and during that class, unknowingly, a check arrived for me. No one had talked to me about it beforehand to say, we've resolved it, we agreed that you're owed this commission. It just showed up one day. And again, I see that as kind of a personal message from the divine, that I'm on the right track. What was my affirmation during those 12 weeks? Simply, I am prospered in all my affairs. Number 4, read spiritual material. If you're treating for prosperity, read about prosperity. If you're treating about loving relationships, read about loving relationships. If you're treating about peace and harmony, read about that. It's what you focus on in mind that outpictures in your experience. And for every minute of the day you invest in that goal, more happens, more outpictures, more demonstrations occur. Number 5, take prosperity classes or classes about whatever your goal is. And remember, Barbara's going to start this class in the next couple of weeks. And I mentioned that I had heard that some people had started reading ahead. And I want to just say that Valerie shared with some of us a very powerful demonstration. And I'm not going to tell you what the demonstration was. I want you after the service to go and ask her. And I think it's amazing. And I just want everybody to know that this stuff works. The more you focus in mind for your goal, whatever it is, peace, love, harmony, health, prosperity, with every additional minute, you add untold blessings. Number 6, surround yourself with like-minded people. I want to ask you, have you ever shared a dream or an aspiration with someone who was sort of negative? How'd that work out for you? All your excitement and enthusiasm kind of just crashed. That's been my experience. And so my suggestion is you don't share your dreams and aspirations with people unless they are of like mind. In other words, don't allow other people to dilute your power. Ernest Holmes says, tell no man. And what he means and what he says in Creative Mind and Success is, when you have a real thing to do, keep it to yourself. Don't talk about it. Just know in your own mind what it is that you want and keep still about it. When we begin to talk about it, the first thing we know, all of our power seems to be gone. That's true. That's why it's so great in our classes, where we have the opportunity to share what demonstrations we've had. And in upcoming Sunday services, we have those people who are willing to give testimonials. They're just so inspiring and uplifting and just show that this stuff really works. And number 7 is visualize. What's the saying? Be the change you wish to see, something like that. If you want something or some experience, act as if you already have it. I was going to use Denise's example, but I'm going to save that for just a minute from now. So, number 8 is journal. Keep a prosperity journal. And it's important that you note in that journal all the expected and unexpected kinds of prosperity that have popped up. Some people don't think about a refund as prosperity or a gift as prosperity. Some people don't think of rebates as prosperity, but these are all things that are coming to you as blessings from the divine. So don't forget about those things when you're journaling about the gifts that you've been given. And number 9, develop a praise and thanksgiving attitude. Fillmore encourages us, he says, praise what you have, be it ever so little, and insist that it is constantly growing larger. And Butterworth says, never allow money of any amount to pass through your hands without blessing it, whether it's coming to you or going from you. And number 10, begin the circulation. Begin giving. For some, the results will be immediate. In others, it might take a little longer, but know with absolute certainty that the law of circulation is just that. It's the law. It will work. Demonstrations will happen. And Waddles, again, he said, if you want more, give more. If you want more peace, give more peace. If you want more love, give more love. If you want more happiness, give out more happiness. And if you want more money, give more money. I want to share with you a story I found on the web, and it's called The Penny. It says, several years ago, a friend of mine and her husband were invited to spend the weekend at the husband's employer's home. My friend was nervous about the weekend. The boss was very wealthy, with a fine home on the waterway and cars costing more than her house. The first day and evening went well, and she was delighted to have this rare glimpse of how the wealthy live. The husband's employer was quite generous as a host, and he took them to the finest restaurants. My friend knew she would never have the opportunity to indulge in this kind of extravagance again, so she was enjoying herself immensely. As the three of them were about to enter an exclusive restaurant that evening, the boss was walking slightly ahead. He stopped suddenly, looking down on the pavement. Arlene wondered what it was she was supposed to notice. She didn't notice anything on the ground except for a single darkened penny that someone had dropped. Still silent, the man reached down and picked up the penny. He held it up and smiled, and then put it in his pocket as if he had found a great treasure. And in her mind, she's thinking, how absurd. What need did this man have for a single penny? And throughout dinner, this kept coming back in her mind. She could stand it no longer. And she casually mentioned that her daughter once had a coin collection, and she wondered to the boss if this penny had had some special value. Well, a smile crept across his face, and he reached into his pocket for the penny, and he held it out for her to see. She had seen many pennies before, and she really didn't see the big deal here. What was the point of this, she wondered. Look at it, he said. Read what it says. She said, United States of America. No, not that. Read further. 1 cent? Nope, keep reading. In God we trust. Yes. And And if I trust in God, and the name of God, even on a coin, is holy, whenever I find a coin, I see that inscription. It is written on every single United States coin, but we never seem to notice it. God drops a personal message in front of us, telling us to trust Him. Who are we to pass it by? So when I see a coin, I stop to see my trust in God at that moment. Is it strong? I pick the coin up as a response to God's message. I tell Him by picking it up that I really do trust Him. And for a short time at least, I cherish it as if it were gold. I think it is God's way of starting a conversation with me. So, that's about the penny. And so, I want to go back and leave you with one additional quote from Catherine Ponder. She said, "All that we desire, all that we can ever envision or hope to attain is already provided for us. It is already available and will ever be awaiting our acceptance." So now, let's get back to this, where we started. What do you think this prosperity bank is worth? Do you think that its worth has anything at all to do with the physical coins inside? Or do you think perhaps it is those 227 personal messages from God? You decide. Peace and love, and so it is.